Welcome back to another episode of the Morning Buzz. Hi, I'm your host, Russell Gahagan from Russell's Fishing Tech, and today I have a new guest, another longtime friend of mine who I met on the salmon tournament circuit. That's one of the greatest things about tournament fishing, in my opinion, is the camaraderie that's involved in it, the friends you get to meet and enjoy. And this week, that friend that I'm bringing on the Morning Buzz is Joe Kanc from Team Kicker. Joe, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good.
All right. Well, Joe, let's talk a little bit about, give the people at home, maybe if they don't know who you are, give them like a 3-4 minute background on sort of, where you fit in the fishing world. Obviously, I mentioned that I've met you through tournament fishing. Talk a little bit about, kind of who you are, where you fish, your boat. I said Team Kicker, things like that real quick.
Okay, yeah. So I'm down here in the Southern Lake Michigan area. It's where I started, like Portage, East Chicago, that whole area. Me and a buddy, we just started fishing for salmon. Didn't really have any upbringing as far as salmon fishing. My uncle dabbled in it a little bit. We just kind of just flew by the seat of our pants on it. And this was really before, YouTube and stuff like this, where you can get a lot of good information. We just kind of took a little bit from everybody that we knew in our area and, hooked up with some captains that we knew from the area to get their take on, what to do down here. I mean, we started off with the coho thing, which is pretty, easy, I guess you would say, in the springtime. March usually, April is usually really good as well. But crankbaits and stuff like that. And we just kind of went out and did it and got bit by the salmon bug, as they say. So, it's just kind of the way that it started for us. We were actually in a 14-foot John boat with a 6-horse motor on the back. And that was our first salmon rig, I guess you would say. So we had a couple cat fishing rods, a couple milk crates, and some life jackets and a throw cushion. And we would go out by the break walls and stuff, and we would go out and catch coho. And that was where it all kind of started. And then, I seen a couple different things for tournaments, and I said, well, that'd be kind of cool. But I said, obviously we're not going to be able to do it in this boat. So we started looking at bigger boats and just kind of, we got a 17-footer was the first boat that we fished tournaments in. And, it was an everyday boat, just a 17-foot boat. We had a couple rod holders on it, and we started, decided to start fishing tournaments. So,
let's talk about boats for a minute, because one of the interesting things I think about sort of me following you through the progression, and I think I met you pretty early in your salmon fishing career, is exactly what you just said. So when I first met you, I think you were in like a 17 to 20-foot boat. You were basically, trailering this boat, obviously, to different ports, fishing the tournaments, primarily down on the southern end to start. And then obviously you've expanded throughout time. And now I saw you this past year, obviously, at a couple events all the way up to to Frankfurt, all the way up in the northern, part of Lake Michigan on the Michigan side as far as the tournaments go. And now you're at a 33-foot rampage. So maybe talk a little bit about for a minute, kind of how that life cycle has been, going from the smaller trailerable boat now to the bigger boat. You move by water. Obviously, there's disadvantages and advantages each way. But talk a little bit about growing through that throughout time.
Yeah, so, with the small boats, obviously it's a lot less cost, and you can kind of go wherever you want, basically. If the bite's good in Holland, you go to Holland. If the bite's good in Grand Haven, you go there. I mean, we, back when we had a trailer boat, we would go up to North Point. And we went by your area a couple times. It's Sheboygan. We'd go up to Door County. Wherever the bite was good, we were there, and that was kind of the thing with the small boat. That was nice. But, when we started getting more serious about the tournament fishing, the smaller boats can be challenging. When you have your time, money, gear, everything invested, and, it's bad weather, or, you want to get to a certain spot, the small boats aren't ideal, and that's kind of where we kind of had to transition to something that was, more, more practical for going out in more extreme conditions and, going to where the fish are, on a tournament day, and not just saying, well, we're going to have to fish here locally because we can't make it to where we really want to go. And, so we started upgrading boats and just getting bigger and bigger until we felt comfortable that, hey, if they're going to run the tournament in this, in any weather conditions, we can make it in this boat pretty much wherever we want to go. And, we can't make it any less or any more than anybody else can with any other boat. So that's kind of where we are now. And I think we're at about the perfect size. And we keep the boat in Grand Haven after we get done with the spring tournaments. And then that way we can kind of go up and down the lake, and hit the different ports.
Yeah. You are right. There is big advantages and disadvantages both ways. And you see that in all these events. I kind of got away from salmon tournament fishing for a few years, kind of when the salmon showdown ended. Now it's back, obviously, and then I kind of got back in this year fishing with a buddy a little bit more. Really enjoyed it. Saw you at a few events, had some fun, had good camaraderie with you again. But you see it, there's some smaller boats that still fish, quite a few of those in that 18 to 20-some foot range. And when the lake's calm, they can really get up and go. They can beat you to the spot. And then obviously there's bigger boats like the one you fish in, and I fish with a buddy and his that is the one, size bigger than yours.
Yeah.
And those boats are really, really nice and comfortable when the lake isn't ideal. But we're not going anywhere fast either, right? So I mean, that is the downside. But how did your season go this year? What did you think, I guess, of the fishing overall? And maybe run us through a little bit of some of the successes and some of the struggles maybe you had on the trail this year.
Yeah, so we started out in the springtime pretty good, doing pretty well, and that's kind of our usual deal. In the springtime, we usually are pretty good, and we got it pretty dialed in. And it was the same this year. So we started out in Michigan City this year. We fished a total of 10 tournaments on the tournament trail this year. So the only one we didn't fish was Muskegon this year. So we fished, like I said, all of them but Muskegon. So we had a real busy year. And we started out down in Michigan City. They have a couple prelim tournaments a couple weeks before. We fished those. We won the Carl Hartman the Friday before the Classic. So that was kind of fun to get the morale going and get the team, amped up. And we did decent at the Michigan City tournament. I think we were 9th place or so. And then we moved on to St. Joe. We fished St. Joe. It seemed like there was kind of a split group of fish, I guess. There was some fish in close, but there wasn't a lot of fish. There were some fish out deep, but the size kind of wasn't there. So with that, for the tournament that we were fishing, it was a 5-fish tournament, 1-day shootout, and just didn't make any sense for us to really go anywhere far. So we kind of just stayed around the pier head and hoped for a couple fish, a couple big kings. We got a few, but nothing that really helped us there. So moving on from there, then we moved the boat up to South Haven, and that worked out a lot better for us. So we ended up winning the South Haven on the AM side. We won first place there. And, that all kind of after St. Joe, we moved the boat up to South Haven. And it was Mother's Day, actually. That Sunday, we decided to go somewhere that we'd never been before. And we went out to a spot that we heard rumors that there were some good fish and some good trout, and we went out there and they were there, and it was some of the best fishing I'd ever seen in my life. I mean, I think there was 5 of us on the boat, and I'm pretty sure we all had a rod in our hand at one point at just fighting fish. Nobody was driving the boat, so good thing there was no one around us. But that was. That was really good to see. So we didn't know if the fish were going to hold because that was the week before the South Haven tournament. And then we pre-fished it before the South Haven tournament, and that spot still was holding the fish that we wanted. And we went back out there for Saturday and Sunday, and we did really well. So things couldn't have gone any better for us, really. And the fishing in shore just wasn't really on, and we had a spot offshore that was really, really producing, and it was a big gamble to go out that far, because once you're out that far, you're committed. There's no other option. You can't, you're invested, and that was a gamble we took, and it paid off.
My guess is that that's probably a similar bite to what Jason Pranger talked about in our last episode. It was a deep water, down deep lake trout bite with maybe some silverfish up a little bit higher. Was there anything in particular tackle wise, not necessarily color, but just anything in particular tackle wise that really seemed to be key out there to get those, those deep fish that probably don't see a lot of gear, don't see a lot of tackle, to get them to bite?
Not really. I think that it was just kind of one of those things that they don't see a whole lot of gear out there, a whole lot of tackle, and as Jason was saying, less is more. We weren't running a full spread out there either, and it was just, it pretty much any kind of rotator or, Dreamweaver, the spin doctors, we use those as well. And anything you put down there, really, they just seem to bite it. If it was in the target zone, they were eating it. I don't think there was too much as far as colors or, we were using just blues and, greens, stuff like that, just your standard stuff. But honestly, I don't know that it really mattered.
All right. So after South Haven, you won that amateur side of that event. Then you moved on up to where next?
That was Grand Haven. And we had, I think, the greatest comeback, certainly in our career. But after day one, we stayed near shore on day one. There were some silverfish around and some trout, and there was fish around. It was good fishing, to be honest, but the fish just weren't very big. And that was our biggest thing was, we needed to find some good sized fish along with, numbers as well. So after day one, we didn't do well. We were sitting in 27th place and we didn't really have anything to lose. So I said, well, let's try a similar thing to what we did in South Haven. Maybe the fish are still in that area. And, we had heard some rumors that there were some fish around out there. So we decided to go out and try it. And it was nothing but a gamble. I mean, we hadn't pre-fished it. We hadn't, we had no idea that whether it was going to work out or not, and we went out there and they were there. And we did really well out there. And some of the boats that were out there didn't do well out there. And, I think it was just, we used a lot of the same stuff that we used when we were fishing South Haven. And a lot of those boats that were out there, there was a few that fished out in that deeper water in South Haven, but they didn't fish out there, quite as much as we did. So we ended up, we went from 27th to 3rd place, and we missed first place by less than 2 pounds. So it was quite the comeback there.
Absolutely, absolutely. So after Grand Haven, you moved up to...
We went to Manistee. We had success there. That was the first time we'd fished that far north in the springtime. Normally we're up there for like the monster and stuff like that in the fall. This was the first time we'd ever been up there in the springtime. We fished the Triport Challenge. We fished out of Arcadia, and we ended up taking 3rd place there. So that was we were happy with that because it's not familiar waters to us, especially that time of year. And we found a pattern that was working, and we were getting some silverfish, getting some decent lake trout, and we were able to put together a nice box. And fishing was tough. It was kind of the same thing. You could get fish, but you couldn't get big fish and get your numbers as well. And that was, we found medium-sized fish, and we found enough of them to for us to do well. So that was kind of a boost for our morale for up north because usually we kind of struggle up there. It's not something that we we fished Ludington a lot. We fished Manistee, and it's a different fishery than what we're used to fishing.
Well, and that's one of the things that I think for a lot of salmon fishermen who stay close to home, which is common. That's the most common thing, right? If you live in Sheboygan, Wisconsin, you fish Sheboygan. Maybe you venture to Port Washington or Manitowoc once in a while. If you fish up in Frankfort and live up there, maybe you fish Frankfort. Maybe you've gone and fished Manistee. But for guys that haven't really traveled around Lake Michigan or even around the Great Lakes in general, but around Lake Michigan, if you're a Lake Michigan fisherman, I don't think they really get a real grasp for how different the fishing can be from Manistee all the way down to St. Joe. And obviously the fish are still fish. They swim. Some of the basic stuff is the same, but as far as the gear, the tactics, that stuff really does change a little bit. What the guys do in each individual port that has a little more success than some of the other things. That's all really, it's a little bit different in each little area. And that's one of the advantages I think that you have by having put yourself out there and going up and down the lake so much as you've now experienced a lot of it. Matter of fact, you've come over and fished our side, as you said, I think at least one time in a tournament, maybe more.
Yeah. Yeah, we did the tournament, and then this year we actually came over to Sturgeon Bay. Not for the tournament, but we came over there for 4 days and fished the 4th of July weekend. So yeah, I mean, we are not a stranger to Wisconsin, but it's a totally different fishery. It's funny as it sounds, and it's totally different for whatever reasons. It's the stuff we use, over here on the Michigan side doesn't translate over there. Just like the stuff we use in Michigan City, a lot of times doesn't translate to the stuff we're fishing in Frankfurt or Manistee or Ludington. It's just different. I don't know if it's water clarity. I'm sure there's a lot that plays into it, the currents and all that stuff, but it's definitely, made us better fishermen, and it's just crazy that it can be that different, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and that's exactly my point. I remember when you came over and fished the tournament, and you had explained to me that the stuff was just a lot different for you than what you were accustomed to, and the stuff we were catching them on, you didn't have that kind of stuff necessarily, or stuff exactly like it. It's flasher flies, flasher fly type of thing, or spoon's a spoon, but there are a lot of sizes and variations, and time of years we use those, and it might be just a touch different than what you do. So you wrapped it up in Manistee at the Triport with a good finish there. Then where'd you head from there?
Then we went across the lake to you for the 4th of July weekend, and then that was just a fun family trip. And then we came back across, and we had the boat in Ludington for a couple weeks, and we were preparing for the offshore there. And that was tough for us, and it's tough. I mean, usually there's 70, 80 boats, in the amateur division, which is what we normally fish, and it's one of the, you got some of the best competition on the lake, and we struggled there, and it just wasn't. We have a hard time fishing Ludington. I'm not going to lie. It's a tough fishery, that bank, and the last season, not this past season, but the season before that, we ended up going south. Down to Little Point. That was the first time I'd fished Little Point. Normally we go to Big Point, and we had decent success. I think we ended up like 12th or 13th or something somewhere, which was our best showing. But that was down south. Well, this year that fishery was really tough down there. There were some boats getting them. Actually, a good friend of mine, Jeremy Barber, he did pretty well down there. But I just didn't have the confidence to make that run to go down there. We hadn't fished it much. We'd been spending most of our time up north. And Manistee fishing for trout, and then fishing the bank there trying to get some kings, and we just struggled, and a lot of the boats did. There's some really good fishermen up there that kind of have that area figured out, and I'll be the first one to tell you that we're not good in Ludington, and we keep going back, and we, some of the teammates, they get frustrated every year when I say that we're going to do that one, but I said one of these years it's going to come around and we're going to get it. You got to keep on doing it. It's the only way you're going to get better. You keep getting beat down, and it's like, we're gonna get it one year, and it's just we're figuring it out, slowly but surely. We're figuring out the different areas, and it's just a tough fishery for us.
Oh, it's interesting because I kind of share the same sort of feelings as you. I think I've fished that event 4 times now, maybe 5, and each time I've fished to the north except for one time that we did well. One time we did well, we fished down by Little Point, and I think we took 2nd or 3rd in the pro division. And took like top 5 in the 333. We did really, really well, but every other year I've fished Big Point or north, and this particular year I fished in the same general area as you did, basically. Yep. Up north of Big Point towards Manistee. And just by happen chance, I didn't talk to you much prior to the tournament, and it just so happened that we kind of were on the same general area working there, and that was a brutal event. There was some small fish, around the pierheads and stuff, occasional big king, but there was a lot of small fish around the pierheads and in shallow water, and there were some guys that run that program. What surprised me about that particular event was the difficulty on the lake trout. That they went, that it got that tough, and this is just hearsay for me because I wasn't there, but I heard it was pretty darn good fishing for the big boys event, earlier in the week, as far as the lake trout went. And I kind of took for granted that we'd be able to get our 9 lake trout, in a reasonable amount of time to then go fish for, 3 silvers. And The first day it took us basically the entire tournament. I think we had 20 minutes to fish for 3 silvers, and the second day I think we were one short, so we didn't even get our ninth lake trout. Now that is, for me, that's bizarre in June, July, or August to not be able to target those lake trout successfully. So
Yeah, I think the craziest thing about that is those fish were there. We marked them. I talked to a few different boats that were there, and they were picking away at them. But as many as I marked on my graph, I couldn't believe that. As we were joking, say knocking them in the head with the cannonball, that they weren't just floating up. I mean, it was just one after another. And I talked to you, if I remember correctly, and you're like, no, it's tough. And I'm like, how are these things not biting? Why can't we get them to bite? I just think there was so much boat traffic there. And I think it just really shut them down. Everyone beating those fish up for those days. I mean, that's my take on it. And I'm not, an expert in that area by any means, but I know that we couldn't get those fish going. And really the only thing that saved us on day 2 was we ended up going out deep. We were kind of on the deep program this year, and we went out deep and we got some really nice steelhead out there. We got some, some 2 and 3 year old kings, and some cohos and stuff. It was a nice mixed bag out there, but we went out there and got our numbers, and then we were going to come in and try to get a king or two, and I think we got one and maybe lost one at Big Point once we had our numbers, but we didn't have much time to fish there anyways. But I think if we would have did that on day 1 and on day 2, I think we'd have been a lot better, because we didn't have any numbers on day 1, and that really hurt us. But on day 2, we ended up going to the deep water, and there were some boats out there that were doing well. And, that was kind of the program. The fish weren't big. They were, small to medium, but you can get your numbers and you get some decent fish out there. It's consistent enough that you could kind of, get some good fish out there.
Yeah, absolutely. So after Manistee, after Ludington, then was it the Monster next for you?
No, Ludington, after that was Holland. That was the Holland, the Big Red Classic.
Okay.
So we went back down south. We took the boat back down south, and we ended up fishing that. And that was tough. And that's another tournament that I think we've had a top 5 finish once, maybe. We've been fishing that. That's one of our favorite tournaments. I think we've been fishing that now 8 years or so. But we love it. We love the captain's meeting, and they give you lunch and everything. That's one of our favorite tournaments. I tell people, they say, they start asking about tournaments, and I say, if you want a fun, bang for your buck tournament, I think the Holland Big Red Classic is definitely that tournament. Fishing's hit or miss, and this year was a miss for us. And we did okay, but it was nothing to write home about. And but it was it's tough then transitioning. Then we'd been fishing up north for for probably a month or so, and going across the lake, but Sturgeon Bay, and coming back, and then then coming down south and fishing out of Holland now. It's just a different fishery, and that's kind of where I think sometimes going all over the lake hurts us, because you kind of get, okay, this was working up there, this was working, this is your pattern, but the waters that you would normally be fishing if you weren't up north, that's where where some of these tournaments take place, and you just kind of get out of the loop on the stuff that's going on down there, and you got to kind of start from scratch basically.
Absolutely. So you did fish the Monster, right?
Yeah. So we fished Holland, and then we fished Saugatuck, and then we went to the Monster. Yep.
Okay, and how'd the Monster go for you? I
remember the Monster, we didn't do well. That's kind of a tough tournament. We won it last year. And so our joke is, you're never going to win a tournament back to back. So we kind of, go into it, we're just kind of joking around like, yeah, we might as well just throw this one away. But, this year we struggled, it's tough to catch 3 big fish. Everyone says, anyone go out and catch 3 big fish. And, you think you just go out and put your big fish baits down and this and that, but it doesn't always work out that way. We were fortunate enough the year before when we won it, we went out, we sat down, we kind of got pushed off our lines because everyone's trying to run that ledge, shelf there in Manistee, and we got pushed off into some deeper water, and I was saying some words that, that weren't very nice, but we got pushed, and in the midst of me yelling and being all mad about it, we ended up knocking a bunch of fish, and it was just, we had about an hour that was just really good fishing, and we had two fish that were well over 20, and then we had one that was like 19 and a half. And I said, all we need is one more big one. And, then the morning bite died, and we didn't have a fish for, I think, almost 3 hours. And we were kind of down in the dumps. I said, we need one more. We need one more good one. And, about, half hour before we had to pull lines, we got the good one. So we got, I think it upgraded us from a 19, I think, to 23 or 25. But we upgraded quite a bit. And it just goes to show you that you can never give up. We went from being, I don't know, probably top 10 to, the first place. And it was just that one fish that made the difference, And so this year it was just, we went and fished, a couple areas here and there, and we just couldn't get the big fish. We were getting fish and then we tried for some trout, and we just weren't on the big kings.
Yeah, that was a tough one. I feel like we were about 2 hours too late on that one to figuring something out. We fished the inside, which is, I think where the bite, well, when we got there, the bite was real skinny. You and I were talking, I think, pre-fishing. It was, it was 50, 60 foot of water type stuff. And I thought we had a really good program, and then it blew out of the south hard and warmed the water up. And of course, that kind of, it mixed that all up. There were still some guys that got a few fish in there, but it wasn't, insane or anything. It wasn't as good as it was when we got there and the water was cold. And then, so it kind of was more of that, like, 80 to 150 range seemed to be where the fish resettled. A lot of us fished there, some with some success, some with not. And then on day 2, we ventured out just looking for some fresh fish because that inside got pounded so hard. And we hooked a really nice, like, probably 23-pound king and about a 20-pound king in the last 2 hours. But, it got so rough.
Yeah, it did.
The tournament up to like 6-foot waves that really the last hour or so, we rode and we couldn't turn around and go back over the fish. I mean, if it had stayed calm, I think we'd have probably, been able to boat another 20-plus pounder. And we wouldn't have won anything, but we'd at least been fairly respectable. And, I felt like we found a nice program there, out in that same thing you're talking, that deep water. And, we got there too late, and then the wind kicked up and it got real. So,
yeah, that wind came out of nowhere. That was something like I hadn't seen in a while. They weren't even calling for it. It took us by surprise. We couldn't believe it.
Exactly. So after that, you must have had one more event and then Frankfurt?
No, that was we kept the boat in Arcadia, I think, for a week at my buddy Josh's place, and then I think, because I think there was a week in between there, and then we went to Frankfurt. And Frankfurt is Frankfurt. It's a love-hate relationship with that tournament, and we had we were fishing right there, by you and by a lot of the boats in the morning, and that pierhead fishery is not something that we're good at. I'm going to be the first one to tell you we struggle in the pierheads because it's not something I grew up doing or that we normally do down here. We don't have much of a fall fishery down in this Indiana area, especially anymore. Starting to come back a little bit, but so that's not something that we are good at. And I'm not good at mud fishing. I'm not good at pier fishing. And I knew we needed some big fish, and I figured we were going to try it.
Yeah, that's some of my favorite type of fishing, pre-fishing for that event. And then, day one of the event, I thought we kind of had it figured out, and then the wind blew really, really hard. We were leading after day one, and I was kind of surprised that it actually worked out perfectly, in the sense that the wind blew, it flipped some things over, but it was actually reasonable in the morning. It was a little bumpy, but nothing crazy. I thought it was going to be really bad. Like, I was pretty convinced when we went to bed that night it was probably going to get canceled because it had really gotten pretty riled up. But it calmed down overnight, and it wasn't nearly as bad in the morning as they said it was going to be. So, yeah, that fall fishing is interesting because there were some big kings around the pierhead, and then obviously it wasn't real good out on the shelf pre-fishing. But then magically, a batch showed up, as they tend to do after a blow. And, a guy like Devin Miller, for example, from MVP, who won that event, he did a great job, was smart enough to leave that shallow water area when that got slow and head out and intercept some more coming in, which is, not rocket science. It's just something that you got to be willing to go for and then have a feel for. And he did. And that was a great move, on his part to do that. But that fall fishing is always tricky because there's a lot of movement going on, right? A lot of in and out.
Yeah.
Fish coming from all over towards the harbor area. And the key is if they're not biting the harbor area, you got to sort of intercept them as they're coming in. So that could be a tricky area. And that one was tough for me. Like I said, we were leading after day one. I think we finished fifth. I hadn't fished that tournament in about 15 years. So it was basically brand new water to me again. And I was happy with how we did, but definitely wasn't. When you're leading on day one, you obviously wanna try to win. And I think historically, I've won most events that I've led on day one, so that was a little disappointing for the ride home, but kind of part of the way it goes, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, that's just the way it is, I mean, all you can do is try to do as good or better than you did the day before, and that's, that's kind of the thing, I'd almost rather be in second or third or somewhere in striking distance and then have a really good day two and then kind of put, the cap on it. But it's tough when you're leading, the pressure's on. And, if you could back it up, it's great. But, when you can't, it's, it's tough. And it's just part of the tournament deal. And I think that's what keeps us coming back for more, And in that Frankfurt tournament, I'm going to be the first to admit I misnetted a king that probably would have jumped us up to second or third. And it was how them fall kings are. They don't give you much room for error, and we didn't fight it long. It was 35 down on a rigger, and it was right there. By the time we knew it, we reeled up on it. Didn't have time to tire him out or anything like that. And he came right, and I come right to the back of the boat. It was getting kind of rough, and I didn't really want to get on the swim platform, which I should have, and I now always will. But he came and went to go make a run on the swim platform, and there was the riggers back there, and I figured if I didn't go for it there, he was going to break off in the rigger anyway. So I went for it, and he got wedged in between the net and the swim platform, and that was it. That was all I wrote. And my buddy thought it was in the net, and he was cheering and this and that, and I come up with an empty net, and he just couldn't believe it. I mean, I threw the net down in disappointment, and there was nothing we could do. I mean, it was gone. I took a stab at it because I figured if I didn't do it, he was going to break himself off anyways, and it just didn't work out, and that's part of the deal, a lot of those fish that you hook, even they're screaming this and that. Next thing you know, they're gone, and it can be very frustrating, and that's just part of that fall fishery.
Yeah, for sure. The fall shallow water deal, or shallow water in general, is an intimidating type of fishing for exactly that reason. Guys or individuals who do some salmon fishing but maybe haven't experienced a lot of that shallow water stuff really don't have a fathom for how difficult those aggressive adult kings are to manage at the boat when they don't pull a ton of line out away from the boat and you drag them in for 30 minutes, to wear them out. When they pull out 150 feet of line, 100 feet of line, and they come at the boat in 3, 4, 5 minutes, they are a handful, to say the least. And, you've had that happen. I've had it happen a million times. I mean, it's just part of the game, especially, as a young man growing up at charter fishing. I stabbed in the head multiple different salmon. I can remember looking at customers that paid $400 or $500, 20 years ago, 25 years ago to go fishing. And I stabbed, their big salmon off with the net. It's happened to all of us. It's part of the deal. So let's talk a little bit about this coming season. So obviously, overall, I feel like fishing was pretty good in 2022. Word on the street is, and I'm not putting words in anybody's mouth. This is just what I'm hearing. The Michigan DNR is going to put some more fish in the lake for your side. The Wisconsin DNR is going to add to the pile over on this side. So it sure appears like, Lake Michigan's on an upward trajectory as far as amount of fish in the lake and amount of fish we should be averaging catching per trip. Kind of give me a rundown of what you expect to see just based now on your years of experience of fishing the lake and kind of what your expectations are for 2023.
Well, I think a lot's going to depend on what's happening this winter. I think that has a lot to do with it, in my eyes anyways. If you have a really cold winter, last year we had a really cold spring, and I think that had a lot to do with, our fishery. And I think that's why we had a lot of the success we did in the offshore fishing that we did. Those fish weren't where they should be. They weren't near shore. There were some fish near shore, but I think the majority of those fish stayed offshore. So, I think it's a little early at this point to really, get a good handle on that as far as spring fishing. Overall, I think the lake's in a good place. I think we have, a good amount of fish, and we have some big fish, and I think you have any day you go out, you have a chance of getting a 30-pound or better fish. And, I think that's something that, I thought that I would never see, to be honest. I'm kind of new, I guess, compared to a lot of guys, as far as, we've probably been fishing the lake for 12, 13 years. So, I didn't have the experience of the heydays or this or that. But, I think from what I've been seeing and everything I've been hearing, I think that we're in for a good fishery again this year, probably even better than last year. And a lot of the fish that I heard in Ludington and this and that they were getting later on in the season, those 2 and 3 year old fish. I think that it's going to be a really good year this year, because they were just hammering those fish out there, this fall. And those are all fish that hopefully stick around and that we'll be able to catch next year.
Well, I don't want to give too much personal information of yours away, but obviously there's baby Kranc involved in the conversation over at your household now. How is that going to play a role in the fishing? And to be honest with you, I always look forward to this aspect for dads, because I've now, I always look at it, I've now navigated this for about 17 years, as my oldest is 17 years old. And that's a tricky thing to navigate: tournament fishing, working, raising children, that whole ordeal. So first of all, congratulations, obviously, to you and your
Thank
wife.
you. Thank you.
How's that going so far? And how's that going to play a role in the Team Kicker 2023 tournament season?
Well, it's been great. Everything's been good. We have a healthy baby and a healthy mama, so that's all good. But, that was kind of one of our moves or decisions to move to an even bigger boat than 30 Pursuit we had. That didn't have all the creature comforts. It didn't have the generator and, all the stuff that this makes it easier on the water. And that was kind of one of the things, when we keep the boat in Grand Haven during the summertime and chasing all these tournaments, we're 3 hours from home or more. So we wanted something that we could actually truly, live aboard basically for the weekends and for the tournaments. So that was kind of one of the things. This boat is laid out great for the size of it, and it's got the bunk beds and a V-berth and a couch that goes down. It's got, TV, it's got everything. So, I think, that this is definitely the right move for being able to have, children on the boat and have them be enjoyable, if they're not comfortable, they're not going to be having fun, And I think that, having them comfortable and all that stuff is only going to make them love the sport more. And hopefully they love it as much as I do or more, And it's, as far as the tournaments go, I don't know that we're going to run all the way up the lake this year. We're just going to have to see how it goes. But we definitely plan on doing, spring tournaments and stuff. But, if we're going to fish Frankfurt this year and run across to, over by you or this or that, I don't know that we're going to do that this year. But we'll see. You never know. If we have a couple good runs at some tournaments and are feeling it, we might go up there. But, the last 2 seasons, we've really, fished a lot of tournaments. I think I know we fished 10 tournament trail tournaments last year and 3 others that weren't part of the tournament trail. But the year prior to that, we also fished, I think it was 10 or 11. So the last 2 years, we've really been, pushing hard, and we're probably going to scale back a little bit. And, not only because of the kids, but just in general, it's just a lot. And it's tough to get everybody to get off work and all that stuff and do all that. We all have regular jobs, and it's tough to do that. But last year, the opportunity was in front of us, so we went ahead and did it.
Absolutely. Well, I can honestly say that I enjoy conversating with you about fishing. I enjoy the camaraderie, so I hope that I'll get to see you at Ludington or one of the events. And it's interesting because you and I are on opposite ends of the spectrum, right? In the sense of I've got a 13, a 15, and a 17-year-old. I'm sort of rolling them into their own life of getting close to adulthood, and I'm getting back into sort of are trying to get back into sort of the swing of maybe fishing some more tournaments and doing some things. As I scaled down, as things got real hectic and busy, and you're going to probably do the opposite, which is you'll probably scale back a little bit as the household will get busy for a few years here, and then I'm sure we'll see you back with as many as you've done in the past in the future. So, but I look forward to seeing you on the trail. You've always been one of the most genuine guys, and I appreciate that. I've enjoyed watching your growth throughout the years of success and trials and tribulations up and down the lakeshore. And I think a lot of guys at home who are just weekend anglers could get a lot of experience and confidence that they'd have an opportunity to have some success fishing tournaments just following what you've done over the years and knowing that you can go from a 14-foot John boat and fishing for fun outside the pier heads to a 33-foot rampage and successfully competing week in and week out in tournaments. So congratulations to you and your crew on all the success you guys have had, not only in 2022, but in past years. And thanks for the camaraderie. I really appreciate it. This is another episode of the Morning Buzz from Russell's Fishing Tech. We had Joe Kanc on from Team Kicker. We had a great episode this week. If you go back on YouTube and you follow some of the salmon showdowns and things like that, you can find some different videos that Joe's been on and kind of get to know him a little bit more on some of those. So appreciate you coming on, Joe. Yeah,
thanks for having me, Russell. And, I post a report after every tournament and after every trip we do, whether it's good, bad, or ugly. If you follow us on Facebook, I post a report no matter what. And it's real detailed and, it's real information. The last thing I want to do a lot of times is, on Sunday afternoon or Monday when I get home from a tournament is post a report, but I do it. And you can look back and you can see I've posted every time. If that post has been out, I've posted it. So there is definitely detailed information on there for any of the ports that we fish. And reach out to me. I have people do it all the time. So, feel free to message me on any one of those platforms. And if you have any questions, I have no problem answering any questions from anybody, no matter where you're fishing.
All right. Well, once again, this is the Morning Buzz with Russell's Fishing Tech. We had Joe Kranc from Team Kicker on this week, and I sure appreciate Joe coming on. I appreciate everybody at home following us on our Morning Buzz show. And there's my wife sticking her head in and saying hello. So, but if you haven't smashed the subscribe button, make sure you hit the subscribe button to the Russell's Fishing Tech YouTube channel. And as we said before, Joe, that's the fun of having family involved in the fishing world, right?
Oh, yeah.
You look forward with the little one and your wife at home. So, Morning Buzz, Russell's Fishing Tech. Not sure who I'm going to have on next week, but there will be another episode next Sunday. Thanks again.